say? Well, here is one based on sunspot cycle, and you can see it does start to trend up, but then turn around and start back down just at the time when this curve is undergoing maximum acceleration. So our bottom line here is that changes in the sun can account for maybe a tenth, maybe 2/10 of a degree centigrade over this 100-year period, but hardly the whole story. There's something more here. Satellites just started measuring the sun's radiances in 1979, and here are three different scenarios of what those measurements look like. You can see these predominant 11-year cycles, as you can down here too. So how does that work out? It doesn't look like anything like this, does it? In this period of time, it should be going dramatically upwards. In that period of time, it's not really doing anything. So again, two types of independent data. It ain't the sun. The cosmic ray guys, love them. I'd like to argue with them. I mean, it's almost like arguing religion with somebody. I mean, they firmly believe and don't bother me with facts. Okay, I know what's happening. So here's the cosmic ray hits. You can see this nice 11-year cycle in here. And ask yourself, does this look anything like this curve, particularly in this portion of it? And the answer is no, it doesn't. So, golly, the cosmic guys are out to lunch. Oh, this is the nice one that goes back 500,000 years. And we can ask ourselves, the temperature here is blue, remember? And look at these blue things. Is there ever a time in the graph or in history where it makes such a dramatic jump all the way here up off scale or up here for the CO2? And the answer is no. In the 500,000 years, we've never seen temperatures change as fast or as much as we have in the last 50 to 80 years. So we think Mother Nature, which causes a lot of variability in everything we know, yeah, she's got a hand in this, no doubt about it, but that's not the explanation for what's happening. Okay. Oh, this is, yeah, I almost don't want to show this. But these people that are deniers, as I call them, are experts at doing this. In this case, what they did was take these blue dots, the last 10 years of this record, and they said, okay, here they are. This is what they look like. Take them out of context. And now let's see, what's the trend in there? Oh, here's the trend. Negative trend over this last 10 years, and therefore, the planet's not warming up. In fact, it's cooling off. Okay? Here's their trend line up here. And if you think that represents what's going on in the last 50 or 80 years, I think you better look again. Completely distorted the data by selecting their sample very carefully. Oh, and by the way, 2010 tied for warmest the planet's ever been. So when you tell me that there's been no global warming in the last 10 or 20 years, I'm sorry, it doesn't work. This is one I sort of struggle with. It's a busy graph and a terrible one in some ways. In other ways, it shows just what I wanted to show. This mixture of climate and weather. Let's go back on the East Coast. You can see a line, I hope, coming in here somewhere that ends on the East Coast right there. That's 2009. Here's that same line in 2010. And you notice at the end of the line it's blue. Okay, well, blue means it's colder than normal. So the guys on the East Coast in 2009 really got clobbered with heavy snow, and they got clobbered again this year. Not record amounts, but still a lot of snow. They are these little blue spots. Now, you're going to say, okay, if that's all you knew, you'd say, well, climate's not changing, or if anything, it's getting colder because yada, yada, yada. But now, here's the rest of the globe in perspective. Red and oranges mean warming, okay? So over the vast majority of the globe, actually, during these very snowy years in the East Coast, it was warmer than normal. And if you now go ahead and average over 10 years, which is a climate time scale, you'll find that the East Coast was still above normal. So taking a few data, a few years worth of data, or a few regions of the Earth and trying to make an argument about climate change just doesn't work at all. It's a misrepresentation of the data. Okay, who are these guys that do this? They testify to Congress? Must be well-known scientists, right? No, they're not. Many are not even scientists. In fact, the new generation of them are, excuse me, from the PR end of things. They have no experience in the field. They don't write scientific papers. And they're basically hired guns by energy industry. ExxonMobil from 2000 to 2003 spent over $8 million funding these guys to talk to the newspapers, to talk to Congress, say there's no problem. Over the same period of time, ExxonMobil was spending the same amount of money putting ads on TV to say how green they were and aren't they wonderful. These people come from what are called think tanks, which I used to be impressed. Wow, the Cato Institute, wow, that must be something. Or Heartland Institute, wow, who are these guys? And in fact, they're lobbyists, pure and simple lobbyists. So the story goes, ExxonMobil funds them, just like they would research, to put on this dog and pony show. And the people in Congress, we have some of them there that are absolutely blatant. One from Oklahoma, a guy named Inhofe, who claimed that this whole global warming issue was the biggest hoax ever perpetrated on mankind. Said this in the Senate. Excuse me. Well, where do you suppose all his campaign contributions come from? All from the energy sector. Guys bought and sold. That's my view, but it sure looks that way. And there are a number of them. But once you have a few of these entrees, then when it comes time for the hearings, the good senator just said, oh, well, I'm going to go to the think tank and say, who do we have online that we could bring up now, boys, and put in the box? And they get a few of these hired guns and money transfers somehow or other, and there you have your opposition. And you know, it's crude and it's crass, but that really is what it is. And the thing that just pisses me off is that they've been very successful at it. That's why there's a lot of confusion in the media today. They've been very successful, and we in the scientific area, I'm afraid, just have somehow failed to communicate the seriousness of this problem. Okay, so here's what these guys are. You can just read that over. The point is that the big corporations don't like change. They like the status quo. Saudi Arabia likes to sell us lots of oil and so on. So, you know, unless we can get people to wake up and realize that this is a big con job that's going on, I really fear for where we will be in 10 years or even less. Okay. So time's up. What's going to happen? Let's step now into the world of the computer models and take everything that we've learned and observed over the Earth in the last 100 or more years and try to put that to the task of saying where are we going to go in the future. Well, here's one where we're going to go. This, again, an awful graph on purpose. This is, remember, we looked at this back to 1,000 years, but now we've gone back almost 2,000 years. Here's the temperature from tree rings and things like that, and then, wow, here's just shoots up. According to different scenarios. This scenario, which is the most extreme of the bunch, my friends in Europe call it the Bush scenario because it burns all the petroleum you can as fast as you can. And once the projections were made about 10, 15 years ago, I'm sorry to say that we're exceeding that limit. That'll put us up into maybe 6 degrees centigrade. Excuse me, it's catching up with me here. 6 degrees centigrade. At 6 degrees centigrade, this planet will not be familiar to you. Full stop, it will not be familiar to you. Places where there are ocean will be land. Places that are now wet will be desert. It will be a very inhospitable place. And that's 2100. I don't think any of you are going to live that long, but we'll be in the soup well before then. The ocean city that I mentioned to you, this is a red line is the one to look at here, where we are in 2100. This will be a major extinction of the ocean fauna if we get to this point, and probably well before this, probably 2050, it looks like. Let me say it again, a major extinction of ocean fauna. The guys give you oxygen and other things. So life in the ocean, as we know it, would be very different. I found from giving these talks that people really don't care about. They look at those things and say, God, that's terrible. Well, I got to do something about that. And then they go home and are into the next class and, you know, forget it. But let's try to make it a little more personal than that. Here are the projected snowpacks in the various mountain ranges. Let's look at this one down here for the Colorado Rockies. And you can't see it. This is about 2060 here. By 2050, 2060, the northern Rocky snowpack's basically gone. And it's this snowpack that feeds the Colorado River system. To remind you, there's an upper basin here. Here's the river, runs down through it, Lake Powell, and Lake Mead, Lake Powell here. And then we take water off for Los Angeles down here and Imperial Valley, Arizona. Phoenix, the fourth biggest city in the country, has basically the Colorado River as their single water source. It doesn't sound like a very smart thing to do, but who would want to build a huge city in the middle of the desert? Anyway, you sort of have to kind of question how long they stood out in the sun. But anyway, it affects a lot of people, millions of people in agriculture. The plan of the Bureau of Reclamation that rules the Colorado and makes it operate looks like this. Mexico, here's the deliveries to Mexico were really big in the olden days before we started to use them. Now their amount of water available is 1.5 million acre-feet a year. The lower basin, which was Las Vegas, San Diego, and those places, Phoenix, they will get 7.5 million acre-feet. No more, no less. And the people in the upper basin of Colorado and Utah and those things think that they're going to get about another 1 million acre-feet of water. Well, guess what? All the water's used. This is blue sky for these guys, and they know it. And because of the various water rights, places like California will be the last ones to go dry. If they wanted to, water gets short, they just turn Arizona off. Would that ever happen? I have no idea. It'd be interesting to see. Here's what Lake Mead looks like. Actually now, too, this was taken in 2007, but this famous bathtub ring is where the used to be in the year 2000 up here. And this is where it is now, essentially. And what's happening? We've taken more water out of the river than was there. And it's been buffered by these big dams that we have, fortunately. But that can't go on for forever. So this is what it means in terms of probabilities. We've gone ahead and worked out all the probabilities of when you'll have this happening and whatnot. And the reservoirs would, with 50% chance, go to dead pool in the next 9 to 16 years or so. Dead pool means the level lake is so low that no more water will flow out of it naturally. You have to pump out, but there won't be much anyway. Well, you can say, hey, okay, we can do without. So let's just cut down the amount of water we're giving people, farmers and all, by 10%, okay? Does that make a difference? Well, not really. It doesn't make very much difference there. Suppose we cut it down by 25%. That would be a major reorganization of the economic system in the Southwest. And still, you run into problems out now when you're, as I said, retired or when your family's leaving the nest. And what'll happen sooner than later, in fact, actually surprisingly soon, we think that the reservoir will drop to a level where hydro generators won't work. It will not produce electric power. And that's the same on many of the big reservoirs up and down the Colorado. So half the water for San Diego comes from this source. Where's the other half come from? Well, the famous delta, shown here with this red area. That's San Francisco, of course. And the water from the Sierra comes down through the Sacramento and San Joaquin River. And in olden times, this was huge marsh from the mountains all the way to San Francisco Bay. But we've reclaimed lots and lots of the land. And so this is a real critical area because the water that we get from the delta comes through this area. And here's some of the dams. Trinity Dam, you probably know, Shasta, Oroville. All of these feed into the delta down here. And guess who lives in the delta? Lots and lots and lots of endangered species. Okay, endangered species. Government has to protect them. Here's the famous delta smelt. And that little guy turned off half the water supply for Los Angeles for 2 or 3 years because he was endangered. And the big intake pumps that send the water down to us were just chewing these little guys up like crazy. So until they came up with a decent plan to protect them, by the signature of one judge, in one day, the water supply to Los Angeles was cut by 500,000 acre-feet. That's enough water for about 1 million families. But you know what? There are a lot of other endangered species that live here. So this is just the tip of the iceberg.